when I get older, losing my hair many years from now? Will you still be sending me a Valentine?
Hi, this is Melissa Negrin-Wiener, elder law and estate planning attorney from Genser, Dubau, Genser & Kona, and this is Elder Law Matters. Today we're going to talk a little bit about life milestones and when you need to see an elder law and estate planning attorney. Elder law is a little bit of a tricky name for what we do because it seems like it should only be for the elderly or people approaching their later years, but it's really not true. And what I like to tell people is, let's look at your lifetime milestones. That's when you really should think about reevaluating your estate plan, your documents, and making some changes and looking to see what you have. So first, we'll talk about perhaps purchasing a new home. Many times young people purchase a new home. They really don't have much in the way of assets. They have a mortgage on the property. Maybe they just got married. And those are major milestones. And you need to look at what you need at that point in your life to make sure that you are protected. So when I meet with people who are in that situation, we talk about powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, and living wills. Power of attorney being a document where you name someone to make financial decisions for you if you can't make your own. Healthcare proxy, where you name someone to make healthcare decisions for you if you are no longer able to communicate your wishes. And we talk about living wills. Living wills are documents that you can sign when you have capacity, stating what your wishes are if you have a terminal condition with no chance of recovery, whether or not you want artificial measures keeping you alive in those situations. Those documents are really important for anybody over the age of 18 because your parents, once you turn 18, can no longer make decisions for you. So that's why I feel like the name elder law is kind of a misnomer. People really need to look at having these documents in place as soon as they become an adult, as soon as they turn 18, to make sure that they're protected. So now we have this young couple who maybe just got married and bought a home. They come in, they do their power of attorneys, their healthcare proxies, and their living wills to make sure now that perhaps their spouse is the person, assisting them with financial decisions, healthcare decisions, things like that. And they also want to make sure that they're protected. We talk about life insurance. What happens if something happens to one of these young individuals and there's a huge mortgage on the house? So life insurance is important. We don't sell life insurance as elder law attorneys, but it's an important thing to look at to make sure that if something happens to one of these individuals, to your spouse, your husband or wife, you're losing their income. Are you going to be able to stay in the home? Are you going to be able to pay the mortgage? So we talk about different things in that regard. And of course, we'll discuss simple wills to make sure that property goes where it needs to go. Something that's really important for single individuals who are in this stage of life, kind of just building their wealth and getting started, is if you're not married and you don't have children and you pass away in New York State without a will, your assets are going to first go to your parents. And if your parents are ill, your parents are on Medicaid, those assets can definitely be vulnerable. So it's very important to look at the big picture. And we find as elder law attorneys that looking at the big picture during these different milestones is really when you're going to start to make some changes and reevaluate. So now this couple that we have, they're in their home, they have their power of attorney, their healthcare proxy, their living will, they have their big mortgage, and they have their life insurance, and now they have a child. So a lot of times people don't really think that they need a will when they're that age, when they don't have, big assets built up yet. They say, oh, I have nothing to leave to anybody. I hear all of these sorts of explanations, but you have a child. So if something were to happen to you and your spouse and your child is now left without parents, you can in your will dictate, well, where does that child go? Who's going to take care of that child? Who's going to raise that child? Who's going to be their guardian? When something like that happens, the last thing that you want your child to deal with is having to be in the middle of some sort of battle between families. So it's very important to make sure that your will specifies exactly what you want to happen, where the child should live, what the contingencies are, to make sure that there's money available to help take care of the child, who they're going to go to, and have the conversation with the people that you plan on leaving as guardians of the child so that they know and they agree. Very, very important, very big lifetime milestone that has to spark that conversation to know that you can have your mind at ease if you're away on a vacation or something happens. So again, we always advise people as elder law and estate planning attorneys to pay attention to these major life changes. That is when you need to come and see us. Okay, not a crisis, but just a regular major life change that people go through all the time. Okay, so now we have this couple, they have their child, they have their wills, they've stated the guardians of the child, they have their life insurance, their advance directives, power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living will, and now they're working and they're building wealth, and perhaps one of them starts a business with a partner, and they need to think about planning for that business. This is Melissa Negrin, elder law and estate planning attorney with Genzer Dubow, Genzer & Kona, and this is Elder Law Matters. You can reach me at 631-390-5000 or at our website at genserlaw.com. That's GENSERLAW.com. And I will be here every Sunday from 4:30 to 5 talking about elder law matters. Now, again, we're talking about how elder law, the name elder law, is a misnomer, and really people need to start thinking about their estate planning and their protection really right from the beginning. So young couples getting married need to make sure that their spouse is protected if something happens to one of them, that they can pay their mortgage, that young people purchasing property or starting to build their assets who are single, that they're protecting their assets in case they pass away without a will. The assets are going to go to their parents who may be on Medicaid. The couple who just had a child now redoing their will to make sure that their child has a guardian named if something were to happen to both the parents. Okay, so these are all of the things that we're looking at for these major life changes where you really need to reevaluate your estate plan. Even if you don't have a large amount of money, it is a very a big kind of misnomer that you need to have a lot of money to do an estate plan. And really, we're talking about other things that are invaluable, like children. And we're talking about our homes and making sure that we can stay in our homes if something happens to our spouse. There's so many different ways that you can protect yourself even at the beginning of your life when you're just starting out. So then we started to talk about starting a business. You start a business now with a partner. You need a partnership agreement. You need to have an understanding of what happens if something happens to one of you, or if there's a disagreement and the partnership breaks up, or if somebody, were to pass away, does a spouse take over? Do they step up into the shoes of the individual who passed away? And what are the rights of buying out each other and all of that? Very, very important to have these types of agreements. And hopefully things go smoothly, and you want to also make sure that your personal estate plan takes your business interests into consideration. Who does it go to if something happens to you, etc. So all of this, again, as time passes and these milestones come, having a child, getting married, starting a business, each time you want to reevaluate what you have in place. Who are the players? Who's your power of attorney? Who's your healthcare proxy? Do you need to change it? You get married. Do you need to change it now from, say, your parents, who you had when you were 18 or 19, to your spouse? Who are your executors in your will? Who are your beneficiaries? Do you have a child? If you have a child, you don't want assets to go outright to that child. You want assets to be held in trust for that child until they reach a certain age and they're responsible. Who's going to be the trustee of that trust? All of this is a conversation that we have at an initial meeting, at a consultation, to talk about setting up these very important documents and getting your estate plan in place, even as young as in your early 20s. We're going to go on commercial break. This is Melissa Negrin-Wiener from Genzer, Dubau, Genzer & Kona, elder law and estate planning attorney, and this is Elder Law Matters. You can reach me at 631-390-5000 or on my website at genzerlaw.com, GENSERLAW.com, and I'll be here every Sunday from 4:30 to 5 o'clock.
Mending a fuse, or when your lights are gone, you can hit a sweater by the fireside. When I get older, losing my hair many years from now, will you still be sending me a Valentine?
Welcome back. This is Melissa Negrin-Wiener, elder law and estate planning attorney from Genzer, Dubau, Genzer & Kona, and this is Elder Law Matters. You can reach me at 631-390-5000 or on my website at genzerlaw.com, and I'll be here every Sunday from 4:30 to 5 o'clock. Before the break, we were talking about lifetime milestones and reassessing your estate plan. Lifetime milestones can be buying a house, getting married, having a child, starting a business. Any type of lifetime milestone should be a trigger for you to reevaluate your estate plan. Who are your powers of attorney? Who is your healthcare proxy? Who are your decision makers? Do they need to change? Has someone gotten ill? Have you gotten married and now you need to change from your parents to your spouse, your power of attorney and your healthcare proxy? Do you have a young child? Now it's time to make a will. What if something happens to you and your spouse? Where is your child going to go? Who is going to raise them? What's the plan to set up finances for that child? All of these different things come into play as your life changes, as these milestones come about. And many times people do nothing because they feel, well, I'm too young. I don't need a will. I don't need a power of attorney. They look at the term of elder law and say, well, it's for elderly people. It's just not, it's a misnomer. Elder law and estate planning together, you start that when you are young. When your first major milestone happens, you need to make sure you are protected, your family is protected. So now we were talking about, right before the break, we were talking about businesses and starting a business with a partner and having a partnership agreement and making sure that your personal estate plan covers what happens to this partnership if something were to happen to you. Making sure that you have a succession in place. Who's going to take over? Are they going to buy? Is your partner going to buy you out? Does your spouse receive anything if you pass away from the business? So these are all things that have to be discussed and taken into consideration. And as people get older, and perhaps there's an illness or a parent gets sick and you kind of start to think about your own situation, you're going to want to reevaluate again. You know, is it time now for me to start thinking about the 5-year look back? The earlier I plan, the better off I am. So maybe perhaps I want to think about putting my house into a trust. Maybe I have a child going to college and we need to work out the best way to handle financial aid, or earlier than that, 529 plans. How do we protect the assets to make sure that they're there? All of this is part of your estate plan. Okay, and you may go to an accountant for one thing and a financial advisor for something else, but it's really important to make sure that everything is tied together and that there's protection for the next generation or for your spouse if you're married. So let's talk about divorce. If somebody gets divorced, maybe they have a young child and they need to figure out all that's going to happen with the child and the visitation and all of that, but they also need to pay attention to their wills. What do their wills say? Do they have life insurance? What are going to be the requirements under the divorce agreement as to who the beneficiaries of the life insurance are going to be? Your estate plan is going to change. Second marriages, very important. 2 people get married and they have children from a prior marriage. What's the plan? I've had cases where the plan is that we're going to leave everything to each other and then we're going to treat the children equally. Now that's fine, but you also have to make sure that you're comfortable with the idea of the spouse, the second spouse, not changing their will after you pass away if you die first. There are trusts that can be set up to ensure that your children are taken care of. So there are a lot of different things to look at with that type of milestone, getting a divorce or getting married a second time. When major things happen in your life, it's true you have to focus on that major thing and dealing with it, but it is so important to make sure that you take a step back and reevaluate your estate plan, because with every major change in your life, you're going to have to reevaluate what you have in your documents, who your major players are, where your assets are going, how they're held. All of that will need to be reevaluated. So many times I've had people come into my office in their 80s and 90s, and I take a look at their wills, and their wills still have guardians listed for their children. So, I look at that and I say, well, that's great, that when you had children, you went to that estate planning attorney and you had those wills done to make sure your children were safe. But what's happened over the past 60 years? I am sure there's been some major changes in your life, and nothing was ever changed. And that's a lot of what we deal with now when we talk to families who have loved ones in their 80s or 90s, and they're looking to perhaps get Medicaid home care or get Medicaid for a nursing home or move into an assisted living, and looking at how all of the assets play out. It's very obvious that they never reevaluated their situation. So it's more important than ever now for people of any age to reassess anytime there's a major change in their lives. When somebody gets older, when they retire, that's another time to take a look at everything. Perhaps you want to sell your home. Perhaps you want to put your home into an irrevocable trust, and you want to talk about, how am I going to protect that home? What am I going to do if I want to sell that home? How does it work? Can I sell it if it's in an irrevocable trust? Who should my trustees be? We talk about the 5-year look back. When's the right time to maybe put my house into a trust, to start that 5-year clock? What makes sense? These are all things that we can talk about when we sit down in a consultation to kind of lay out the plan. One of the trickiest things for people to really understand is you can only plan for right now. Nobody has a crystal ball. This is Melissa Negrin-Wiener from Genzer, Dubau, Genzer, and Kona, and you're listening to Elder Law Matters. You can reach me at 631-390-5000 or on my website at genzerlaw.com, and I'll be here every Sunday from 4:30 to 5 o'clock speaking to you about Elder Law Matters. So in speaking about major lifetime changes and making sure that you're protected, retirement is a really important time in somebody's life. They want to now enjoy what they've accumulated and do things, but make sure that they can still protect what they have, their hard-earned money, their hard-earned assets from a lifetime of work to pass along to the next generation. So in that meeting, we'll talk about making changes and doing asset protection, irrevocable trusts, protecting the home, or perhaps they want to downsize. Maybe they want to buy something smaller. So now they're going to have some liquid assets once they sell their big home, their family home. And what do we do with those assets? Is it important to make them into an income stream? What does your income look like once you retire? Now you're on a set income. You have Social Security, you have pension. You no longer have your paycheck coming in. So what's going to happen now? What needs to change? Perhaps you have children who are having some crises, and your will leaves everything to your children. And then if they predecease you, to their spouse, and maybe they're getting divorced. So it's not even major changes in your own life. But once you reach that age of retirement and you can look back at your children, grandchildren, maybe there's major changes in their lives. Perhaps you have a grandchild who's a beneficiary of your will, and that grandchild is going through some crises. Maybe they have a gambling problem. Maybe they have a drug problem. Perhaps they have creditors, like a spending problem. there are so many solutions. We can always find a solution for these problems, but you need to make sure you take that extra step to reevaluate your estate plan when any of these things come up. It's as simple as making a phone call, saying, this is my situation. Is there something that I need to do? But people do not think about this. They're engulfed in the crisis, and that's very understandable that you get kind of drawn into the crisis and just dealing with the crisis. But at some point, you need to reassess. You need to look at your estate plan, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, your living will, your last will and testament, your irrevocable trust, if you have one, if you need one, your business succession planning. All of these things are wrapped up in elder law and estate planning, and everything affects everything else. Thank you for listening today. This is Melissa Negrin-Wiener with Genzer, Dubow, Genzer & Kona, elder law and estate planning attorney. And this is Elder Law Matters. Contact me at 631-390-5000 or my website at genzerlaw.com. That's GENSERLAW.com. And listen to me every Sunday afternoon from 4:30 to 5 o'clock talking about Elder Law Matters.
I could be handy in mending a fuse, or when your lights are gone, you can hit a sweater by the fireside Sunday morning.